Link has been captured, and though the imposters who had taken control of Hyrule's government have been dealt with, new rifts have opened up around the kingdom, the locations of which coincide with a legend regarding a certain prime energy. Zelda is tasked with mending the rifts and rescuing Link in order to unite against their unseen enemy. Or are they unseen? Meanwhile, up Eldin Volcano, the rifts here have swallowed a portion of Goron City and its inhabitants, including the newly appointed chief, Darstan. After Zelda is able to rescue him from the still world, the two begin working together to collect information from the Goron elders. Unlike his father, who he has taken over as chief for, Darstan isn't particularly headstrong. He's more of a bookworm than most Gorons, and has a tendency to overthink things, but through working with Zelda, he learns some valuable lessons about leadership, leaning too much on the past, and doing things his own way. With Darstan's help, we're able to eventually make our way through these volcanic caverns, where we can make an entrance to the still world. After a bit of platforming around these stilled volcanic landscapes, we'll find ourselves at the entrance to the next dungeon. I can't talk about Eldin Temple without first addressing the music, because frankly, it's amazing. This is one of my favorite pieces of dungeon music in the whole series. Like, why is it so good? Mostly strings, it's tense and dramatic, and really gets me moving. Like, literally, I start bobbing in my seat with this song playing. Zelda's fire dungeons, historically, have often gone for more atmospheric tracks. Turtle Rock, Dodongo's Cavern, the Fire Temple, Dragon Roost Cavern, and the Goron Mines all leaned in that direction, but that's not always the case, and this is one of the exceptions. They did not hold back on this one. It's up there with the likes of Skyward Sword's Earth Temple as just being so full of energy. It's good stuff, and feels just the right amount of dangerous for such a hazardous environment. As for visuals, there isn't much in the way of architecture to speak of here. The dungeon almost entirely uses a cavernous, stony aesthetic. At a glance, there's only a few seemingly man-made parts, like the doorways, these floor tiles in a few spots, and debatably these rock climbing walls, though it could be argued that the Gorons, who are known for simple stonework, intentionally used a very natural looking design. The stone walls almost seem to have an interlocking scale-like pattern to them. It appears very uniform, and there are rooms with simple paintings on the walls to highlight the consistency in size of these stones. So maybe there was a more deliberate building process than I assumed initially. As for actually playing through the dungeon, ironically perhaps, this is one of the weaker aspects of Eldin Temple. It's not a particularly long or complex dungeon, with only 3 floors, 2 of which have only 3 rooms each. A good chunk of the dungeon, about a third of it, is spread out between the various side-scrolling sections. These are either used to bridge floors, or seemingly disconnected parts of the map, though in general I prefer the former approach more than the latter. Having a side-scrolling room essentially be an extension of a staircase works neatly for me, adding an extra layer to exploring between multiple floors. As for the other approach, well, I know that when talking about Link's Awakening's dungeons, I talked a lot about not liking these, and how it often felt like a band-aid solution to working around the dungeon's layouts. This game handles it a little better in my opinion, by not only making the side-scrolling rooms more interesting and elaborate in and of themselves, but by just better integrating them into the dungeon layouts in general. Though the map screen could display them better, as I mentioned when looking at Southern, I never really feel like it's an unnatural or disjointed part of the progression in this game. I feel Link's Awakening has better dungeons overall, but I think this one aspect of its design is improved upon here. That said though, of all this game's dungeons, I think Eldin Temple is the one to handle the concept best. It feels like a dungeon built around playing in this style more than the others do. One of these side-scrolling rooms even acts as a sort of central room for the final chunk of the dungeon, with locked doors, branching paths, and keys to grab. That heavy integration of this viewpoint also goes hand in hand with the dungeon's heavier emphasis on platforming. The overall navigation is a bit on the simpler side here, so instead, the challenge leans more on having the dungeon feel like something of an obstacle course. There are pitfalls with updrafts to glide over, pools of magma, and of course those aforementioned rock climbing walls. In quite a lot of these rooms, the magma also raises and lowers, so you can add a sense of timing to the echo bridging puzzle platforming, and things get a lot more interesting. The dungeon also features our third mid-boss fight against Link, or rather a Link Echo. This time, he spams bombs at you, both the regular variety and the mobile bomb chews. Nice to see them back. This is probably the easiest of the three battles against him, since the bombs are fairly easy to avoid. Plus, the room is filled with these destructible blocks, which will get blown up by the enemy's bombs, dropping hearts and energy pickups to refill your sword fighter gauge. He moves around a lot, so I guess the challenge is meant to be just staying on him, but honestly, Zelda is a speedy climber, even without equipping a climbing speed buff, so I never found myself really struggling to get my attacks in. Honestly, it's a little strange to me. The battle against Link in Southern really set a high bar, but every Link fight after that one has gotten easier and easier, like it's not scaling enough with how powerful the player is growing. Alas, defeating him rewards us with what is essentially the dungeon item, bombs, as you'd expect, which would be cool if not for the fact that we should already have both bombfish and zero echoes by this point in the game, which we can summon with very little restriction, whereas using bombs in sword fighter form comes at severe limitation by comparison, since it's tied to your energy gauge, making this a frankly underwhelming inclusion. The bombfish especially overshadow this ability, since you can use them in much the same way already without draining your energy. You can also spawn them at a distance, and you have unlimited of them. The only drawback is that they tend to wriggle around a bit, but you can either hold them in place or use bind on them, and they won't damage you. Zero, meanwhile, are all over Eldin, and even as enemies, may inadvertently bomb stuff in earlier rooms of the dungeon for you. It just feels to me like bombs were included in your sword fighter kit out of some obligation more than for any real intended use case. In order to secure the boss key, which is hidden in a passage that requires a small key to get to, we'll have to trek down this long vertical chamber, which isn't too hard. The challenge kicks in once we've gotten the boss key itself, as this turns into a brief escape sequence. The lava will begin to rise, and since we don't want to die a fiery death, we have to book it. Nothing unmanageable, but it's a fun little bit of action, especially as the final ladder breaks, forcing you to come up with an alternative on the fly. I like stuff like this, little bits of tension and then relief. That said, I kinda wish this sequence was about 50% longer. It goes by real fast, like it ends right as the going gets good. which is a statement that can apply to the dungeon as a whole. We've got a tangly little area that winds in and out of itself, where we use bombs to break through obstacles, have to find a couple of keys to nab the boss key, and then open the way forward, and a big magma-filled area to traverse through. All very exciting. And then we reach the boss door. It feels like just as things are getting really fun in here, the dungeon politely comes to a close. But with the boss key in hand, we can unlock this door, and in what feels like a callback to the end of Dodongo's cavern, jump down this pit in order to confront the dungeon boss. Emerging from the lava is a fiery, serpentine dragon. It's Volvagia, making a return from Ocarina of Time. And he looks great. He's perfectly adapted to this game's art style while still being true to his original design from the N64 days. Besides, who doesn't love a good dragon fight? By the same token, the fight itself follows the same principle. True to the original design, but adapted to this game. We aren't using a megaton hammer this time around, but there are similarities to that classic battle while putting Zelda's new moveset to use. Essentially, his behavior remains largely consistent with the Ocarina of Time version of Volvagia, alternating between flying out of reach, breathing fire, and popping out of holes below the arena. But with different tools at our disposal, things play out differently here. The most effective way I've found to tackle the fight is to use Bind to pull on his big glowing necklace in order to stun him, which is conveniently color-coded as green to hint at this. Then getting in close either with Echoes or Sword Fighter form in order to deal damage. Easy, right? Well, as an added wrinkle to things, this is the most hazardous boss arena in the game, being broken up into smaller platforms, and of course, being surrounded by lava. Spicy. So in addition to avoiding his attacks, we also have to be mindful of our footing, which especially comes into play during those moments when we can use Bind on him, since he'll take that opportunity to charge up a powerful breath attack, and you only have so much room to move around in to avoid it. For this point in the game, it's honestly nice to see the challenge ramp up a bit. This also is the one that feels the most like a classic Zelda boss so far in the game, aside from Ganon himself, of course. And that's probably because it largely just is one. You know the drill. Wait for the right timing, stun him, then deal damage. He's even immune to arrows while flying around, so it's very timing dependent. But you know what? I like that. I like that we have a mix of different boss styles, some being more traditionally designed than others. That's cool. But most importantly of all, I have so much fun here during this battle. Every time I've done this fight, I've just found myself grinning. What a great inclusion, and of course, a fitting battle to conclude this fiery dungeon. Good to see you again, Volvagia, and rest in peace. So overall, Eldin Temple is a perfectly average fire dungeon. Maybe a notch above average, I'm not sure. There's a lot of good things going on in here, but it never quite feels like it reaches the level of excellence that I expect from the series, and I think that length plays a big part in that. The dungeon is quite short. Remember what I said earlier about the escape sequence where we get the boss key, that it should have been about 50% longer? I think that applies to the entire dungeon. There's a sense of escalation here, with challenges getting just a little bit more interesting as the dungeon goes on. But the whole thing comes to an end before it gets to a point where it goes from good to great. Another part of my feelings towards this may stem from the fact that I'm a big puzzle guy. My favorite types of dungeons are the ones that feel like big, winding, tangled knots that you have to pick apart bit by bit. And this dungeon is not quite that, leaning more into being a gauntlet style instead. I mean, Kind of. There are a few forks in the road, with keys and locked doors, and that's great, but it's far from complex feeling. I'd argue that the main focus of this dungeon seems to be on platforming rather than navigation. Granted, I'm not saying this is like a Mario level. In fact, I think it's at its best when it leans into what I'm calling puzzle platforming, by having us use our echoes to work around problems and overcome the various obstacles that it throws at us. That's cool, but I just wish there was a little bit more to it. Because of the lack of real navigational challenge and the overall short length, it almost feels like a bit of a step backwards compared to, say, Gerudo Sanctum, which was great. I do like some of these individual puzzles on their own though, particularly when we have long gaps to cross and the only thing holding us back is our echo limit and imagination. Or sometimes it's a matter of moving around the platforms that are already in here. And there's this one puzzle where the treasure chest containing the map is blocked on either side by hot geysers. So you can either use echoes to block the steam off, or use bind to just move the chest to a safer location. Either way is perfectly valid, and I like those moments where it gives you pause so you can assess the situation and think, how do I get that? I like overcoming those moments, though I am curious how other people manage to get past this puzzle. This ladder is blocked by destructible blocks, and using bombs to destroy them is a little on the trickier side, so I just end up floating over the ledge with water blocks instead. But let me know how you did it. But honestly, it feels bad to say it, but the music kinda is the best part of the dungeon. That theme is absolutely fantastic, and you can probably expect it to show up in future videos when fire dungeons come up. I don't see myself getting tired of it. Though speaking of music, the boss music for Volvagia here is fine, but there's a part of me that wishes they had done a remix of the old Volvagia theme instead. I know this is a minor point, and in general, I tend to lean towards preferring original stuff rather than just rehashing things we've seen a bunch of times already. But when it's literally the same boss, it's hard not to compare them, and that original theme from Ocarina of Time was frankly so good. As nostalgic as those old sound fonts are, there's a part of me that would have loved to have heard it get a modern adaptation. But really, again, this is a minor point, and so not a big deal. So yeah, Eldin Temple is good, not great, and frankly, I wish it had taken the plunge of being just a little longer and a little more complex, but otherwise, it's a good dungeon, just not an amazing one. I like what's here, I just wanted to get a little more out of it. Thank you so much for watching. Special thanks goes out to my patrons and channel members, the names of which you're seeing on screen right now. You guys are awesome. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Bye-bye.